So today we're going to talk about the presuppositional apologetics. This is the one of the best argument. I mean, it is the best argument to use against atheists and other religions because this is the basis. This apologetics, first of all, apologetics just means defending your faith, apologizing for anything. The Bible commands us to defend our faith, and we ought to do it rightly, logically, and not badly and illogically and stupidly. We ought to have good defense of what we believe because we are Christians and we are the sons of God, not sons of retards and idiots, right? So we need to understand that we are the God, our Creator, has designed the world, and we are able to point to Him. Now, the presupposition apologetics has been used mainly by many reformers. So, what is it? Our beliefs or some presuppositions are beliefs or assumptions that are taken or granted or assumed to be true without explicit evidence or proof. They are fundamental beliefs that people hold about the world and themselves, and they underlie many of the beliefs and behaviors that people exhibit. Presuppositions can be conscious or unconscious, and they can be shaped by a variety of factors such as culture, religion, personal experience, and education. For example, if someone says, I'm not going to eat that hamburger because it's unhealthy, the presumption here underlying this statement is that hamburgers are generally unhealthy. His belief may be based on personal experience, culture norms, or scientific research, but it is assumed to be true without further explanation. Presuppositions can also be seen in language use, where certain words or phrases imply a certain belief or assumption. For example, saying when I become rich, presumption that becoming rich is a realistic and achievable goal, and it is assumed that wealth is desirable overall. Presuppositions are important because they shape the way people see and interact with the world around them, and they can influence behavior and decision making. So now we understand what a presupposition, just by definition, that as I explained earlier, it's something we presume is true in our mind, can be in our unconscious mind. When we speak, talk, or move and do everything in our daily life, it's something we assume to be true before even really thinking about it. Or sometimes it could be developed over our society and culture. Now we jump to this important area called worldview. Okay, please define your terms whenever you debate with an atheist or anybody. Explain to them what is a worldview and what is a presupposition, or mostly a worldview, right? A worldview is a set of beliefs, values, and assumptions that a person, group of people hold about the world. Reality and their place in it provides a framework for understanding and interpreting the world, as well as guiding behavior and decision making. A worldview can be shaped by a variety of factors such as culture, religion, philosophy, personal experience, and social context. It can be influenced by factors such as education, upbringing, and exposure to different perspectives. Worldviews can vary widely across individual cultures and can have a significant impact on how people view and interact with the world around them. So, what is presupposition argument for Christianity? Let's come to the main basis. Since we understand what worldview is, like what how do I view this world? In what context do I see it in? As Christian, we see this world creation is made in the image, made by God, and there's so many other presumption comes with that the loss of logic comes from God. We get to that later. So presupposition is a philosophical approach to defending the truth of Christianity that emphasizes the foundational nature of beliefs and presupposition. According to this argument, all worldviews, including atheism and other non-Christian worldview, are based on presumption or assumption that cannot be proven by reason or empirical evidence alone. Presum- Presuppositionalism argues that Christianity is the only worldview that can provide a coherent and consistent foundation for human knowledge, morality, and rationality. It asserts that the presumption of the Christian God's existence provides a necessary foundation for all other beliefs and knowledge claims, and that without this presupposition, human reasoning and experience cannot be justified or trusted. Therefore, presuppositional argue that presuppositionalists argue that the best way to defend the truth of Christianity is not through empirical evidence or logical arguments alone, but by exposing the inconsistencies and contradiction of other worldviews and demonstrating the coherence and consistency of the Christian worldview. In summary, the presupposition argument is an argument for the truth of Christianity that asserts that the Christian God existed is a necessary presuppositional for all knowledge, morality, and rationality, and that the Christian worldview provides the only coherent and consistent foundation for these beliefs. So this is an example of how this will be made. Let's say someone claims that atheism is more reasonable and rational worldview than Christianity because it is based on empirical evidence and reason. A presupposition might respond by pointing out that even the most basic beliefs and assumptions of atheism, such as the reliability of human reasoning and validity of scientific inquiry, are ultimately based on presuppositions that cannot be proven by reason or empirical evidence. The presuppositionalists might argue that the Christian worldview provides more coherent and consistent foundation of these presuppositions because it posits the existence of an all-knowing and all-powerful God who created the universe and endowed humans with rational faculties that can be trusted to discover truth. In other words, if you're an atheist, you believe every single thing is just a coincidence or randomness. How can you even trust your own reasoning and rationality? How can you trust that? Or how can you even explain it that it make any sense? A better question you could ask them is, where does the laws of logic come from? This laws has existed before creation, obviously, because there's nothing contradictory before creation, right? So the presupposition, this argument shows that they cannot give a defense without appealing to without stealing from our worldview to say that the laws of logic exist or that truth exists, right? You should ask an atheist what is truth. You should ask any religion what is truth. For us is God. God itself is truth. He is the one who transcends time and reality. Every truth that exists, truth itself is God in nature, that he exists beyond time and reality and creation, right? Same thing with morality. When someone say something, God did something evil in the Bible, ask them straight away, where does morality come from? Is it your opinion? And if it's your opinion, it's completely meaningless, because when that person dies, it's whatever it is. Even if he's alive, who cares? If you can ignore him, whatever. And this falls into many category and many arguments these days. Is this people what they feel or what they think morality is going wrong? But we have the Bible, and God transcends time and reality. Overall, the presupposition would be using this argument to challenge the underlying assumption of atheism and other non-Christian worldview and demonstrate that Christianity provides the only coherent and consistent foundation for human knowledge, morality, and rationality. So, there's another thing I want to bring up in this thing. I didn't put the PowerPoint in, but we're going to talk about fallacies, all right? I'm just going to talk about few fallacies. I know those videos will be very long if I go through all of it. You can look it up on the internet. During an argument, this is a sin if you don't do this. If you commit fallacies, you sin. Now, what are fallacies? They're pretty much invalid arguments, and they're widely used in the context of political discussion and all that. So what they tend to do is that where a great fallacy, again, fallacies are objectively true because God exists, right? It's not because I believe fallacies are, an invalid argument is an invalid argument because I say so. That is also a fallacy. It's called appealing to authority. Just because I say so doesn't make something true. The reason everything is true is because it comes from God. God transcends time and reality. So, in other words, what I'm trying to say is that the Bible is the foundation for logic and reasoning. So when we Christians talk to other people, we shouldn't commit these fallacies to honor our God. We know where it comes from, we know why it's objectively true. So an example of a fallacy commonly used in this day is ad hominem fallacies. Instead of attacking the argument at hand, they attack the person presenting the argument. For example, I say Calvinism is true. My dad says that can't be true. I'm only 19 years old. That's a fallacy, appealing to my age, thinking that completely, pointing myself out instead of arguing with the argument I brought up, like Calvinism is true. Instead of attacking that, he attacks me personally, which is completely irrelevant to the truth claim. So, in other words, We Christians ought to remember fallacies. Now, there's so many out there. Take your time, study it, understand it. As 10, there's many 10, right? Like the bandwagon fallacy is where you is if let's say everyone agrees to something, it makes it true, which is, well, stupid, right? Doesn't mean everyone agrees upon something makes it objectively true. So this is something we need to study, and also we need to understand what are the laws of logic, laws of contradiction, law of identity, something be what it's not. So we need to study all this and then understand logic at its basis, right? And then we can use it in arguments, and you realize when to stop arguing with a fool, because the Bible commands us not to do so. When someone asks a stupid question, because they commit a logical fallacy. Now, some people might not intentionally do so. Then you ask them, or you ask their motive why they're asking this question. Sometimes it could be out of selfish motive, sometimes they just want to waste your time. So we ought to be doing this in practice every single day, because some people will argue and commit fallacies and just don't waste your time, or they try dodging the question, which is also called the red herring fallacy. If they start dodging, bringing up other topic, they don't care about the truth, they only care about their own self, right? Or their time, or they don't really care about anything. So, in other words, this is a good way for us to spot foolish people and focus on talking about truth and following Christ. Thank you very much. Hope you guys understand, and that is all.